So Jessica, if you're getting your house ready for sale, what are some of like the top things you would do to get the house ready to go on the market?
So decluttering I think is huge because if it's cluttery, it's hard for people to envision themselves there, and it just looks a lot better when it's decluttered.
Yeah.
And also having it clean, obviously, freshly painted if it's needed. I wouldn't go out of my way doing any big renovations or anything like that, but if it does need a fresh coat of paint, it can make a difference, and I feel that it's a good way of freshening up the house without spending way too much. What are your thoughts?
You're asking me that just the perfect time as I finish my food. No, my thoughts would be pretty much the exact same thing. I always tell people to do it in this order. So declutter the house, because you're going to move out of the house anyways.
Right,
and it's the easiest thing to do is just to pack up stuff in boxes, put it into a garage, put it into an unfinished basement, like wherever there's an unfinished space.
Or always, a storage unit, yeah.
Yeah, or into a storage unit. And then always kind of have a pathway so buyers can still kind of like walk in and see the space. Like in the garage, if you store a crap ton of boxes, make sure there's a path so they can kind of see around. Once you have all the decluttering done, which is a big part of it, because I tell people have it look almost like a model home with how decluttered it is. That's the goal. You don't have to get it to that point, but the closer you get to that, the better. So the point is like you really declutter more than you probably think. Once you have that box checked off, then the next thing I would do is I would then focus on maybe any touch-ups with paint, because paint's so cheap and it has such a high profit margin for, you know, like this whole house that we painted, it costs like $1,000 to hire a painter and do all that, I'm pretty sure, maybe a bit more. That's not that much money in comparison to how much you're going to up the value. You get up the value 5, 10, 15,000 just off paint. Maybe not 15, well maybe.
Yeah, depending on the house. Yeah, I really think that you can.
Yeah, it depends how it looks prior to the paint, right? If you have all like lime green walls and it looks really bad, then yeah, you would see that kind of a difference, 15,000. If it looks like a normal house and you like have an off-white consistent color kind of thing, you up the value by 5 more than what it is, or 10, but it still costs you 1,000, so it's worth doing. So that's why if it was me, I would declutter, I would do the paint. And then once I have that finished, I would focus on like the landscape outside too. I think the first picture on the real estate on the MLS is so important because people see that, and then if that
first impression,
it's first impression, and it's like the curb appeal. And if they see it and they don't really like are drawn enough to it, because you got to remember when you're selling a house, you're asking a price, and they see the first picture, and if that doesn't line up with the price, they're not drawn. It's like a cover of a book, right? You see the title, you see the front of it, and it's like, nah, next book. You gotta have that be the portal to like suck people in to look at more pictures, so they're like, oh, okay, like I can see myself paying, around what the price is, and therefore I should go see the house.
Yeah, and also too with that, like they could do minor things that make a big difference, like driveway sealing, having a gardener come in, clean up the gardens, obviously mowing the grass and stuff like that. Maybe painting the garage door if it needs it, or painting the front door, getting some flower pots. It doesn't need to be like a major renovation, and all those things outside can really enhance the curb appeal without spending a ton of money, because landscaping obviously can get expensive. Yeah. And even having a realtor or a professional in to show you where you can put your money or should put your money is helpful, because I think we get used to our houses. So I've been at houses before where they're like, we only have a couple $1,000, so we're going to put in a backsplash. And I'm like, if you only have a couple $1,000, I would be painting here or whatever, right? I'm like, leave the backsplash or use that money to change out light fixtures or whatever. So I think that that's something that's huge. So getting it all cleaned, decluttered, getting a bin for garbage if needed, or bringing stuff to the dump is huge. And staging, I think, is important too. I know it's not really realistic for some people if they have kids and pets and stuff like that, but if it's a vacant home, having it staged, I think, makes it look so much nicer for people going through. It helps them be able to envision themselves in that space. Staging, I think, is really big. And yeah, paint, lights, little things, even sometimes doorknobs, things that maybe really stand out as being in rougher shape in a house. But I mean, you could go on forever, so whatever makes the most sense to do.
I agree with all that. I'd say the other thing too is have a chat with the real estate agent. Ask them what are the things buyers might look for in a home inspection when they do a home inspection on the house. For instance, like the furnace, is the furnace filter changed? How old is your furnace? How old's the AC? How old's the roof? Stuff like that. You want to probably try to avoid having to do those things because you typically won't make a profit margin on it. Replacing a furnace, you're not going to up the value of the house because you have a new furnace by, more than $7,000 and making a profit on it if it costs
It's
$5,000.
expected that the furnace is going to
Exactly.
be in good
So if
shape.
there's some of those things that are like really a drawback that they'd find in a home inspection, then you might just have to do it to bring it up to sellable, right? Just to get it to sell, basically. It'll probably still sell, but now we have to factor into the price, and you'll get less than you could have got if you would have fixed those things. So I would like go through a checklist of those things in the home inspection that make sure everything's good there. And usually everything's pretty good. Even if your furnace is older, say it's 15 or 13 years old, that's fine. But if it's like 20 years old or 25 and it has a life expectancy of 15 to 20, then that's probably too old. And buyers might like be weary of that.
Or even things like getting the furnace serviced, so you have everything out for people. When I sold a property that I owned in the country, I did a water test, so I had a clean, recent water test. I had the septic pumped, all the receipts out for people. We put together, even with our listings, a binder of all the information.
Yeah,
so
that's a good idea.
when people came through, they saw, oh, the septic was just pumped, water test is recent and clean. Of course, the buyer can do their own water test, but I just had that all laid out. House professionally cleaned. I had the furnace serviced, all that sort of thing. So you want them to walk in feeling like, wow, these people really take care of the place. Even putting together a binder of information on when different updates were done, like when was the roof done, because these are all questions people are going to have.
What the school district is, stuff like that.
Yeah, school district, all of that stuff, because I feel that you want to leave like no question unanswered for the potential buyers, right? When they come in, you want them to like the house, see the information, and basically just be ready to make an offer. So having the questions answered too is a whole other part of it, I feel, because you've probably been in the situation too where your clients love a house, they're waiting for information, we don't hear back from the other person or whatever.
And the interest just kind of fizzles off.
Yeah, so then a couple days later, you're like, hey, I got the answers for you. And the client's like, actually, we've decided against that one.
Yeah.
And they just had time to look at other properties or whatever.
Yeah, so back to like the home inspection thing, check in to see if there's anything that could come up in a home inspection report or home inspection in general where it could be a deal breaker for someone, or maybe the house sells but it's conditional on that and then it falls apart because they found something. Trying to like be aware proactively of those things, and they could even be disclosures, right, that you need to like, discuss. But another good thing too could just be doing the home inspection in advance. So what I mean is kind of two things. One, you have a discussion with like the realtor about what they look for in home inspections, go through that. The second thing is actually, well, what if I do a home inspection before I sell the house? And that way you can disclose that out. I know some agents maybe don't like doing that. I'm more pro doing it because I find that at least you're going to disclose everything that you could possibly be aware of, but you get one step closer to getting a firm sale, since they're probably going to do a home inspection anyways, unless you can get a huge bidding war on the house. But in this market, that's more unrealistic now. So I think it's even more important to do kind of in this market
inspections
than when the market was really hot. And
yeah,
people
me
were
too.
like, home inspection? Nah, who cares? I think people are going to do one. So it'd be probably good to practice.
Well, it actually is nicer if the seller knows now, rather than when their house is on the market, they have a conditional accepted offer, and then the buyer comes back and says, by the way, here's some issues, we want money off, or we're not moving forward or whatever. And depending on the seller's situation, the seller might be like, well, we need to move out west or wherever we're moving. Let's just take the $20,000 off and get this over with.
Yeah,
you want to hopefully avoid that for the seller.
If it
or
falls
that
apart,
too.
then you got to explain to others why it fell apart, and they just get like a little weary, even if it was just something that's kind of trivial, because the buyer does have the right to back out pretty much for whatever they feel regarding the home inspection.
And with the home inspection too, if something does come up and the seller is willing to fix it or whatever, they kind of are in a time crunch. So if the buyer has to firm up by like Friday and it's Wednesday, they might be like, we'll just get a couple quotes and just agree with one to get this done or whatever. Whereas if they have months, of preparation, and they can properly educate themselves and shop around and find the right person to make sure that they're not overpaying for whatever it is they need to do. And to make sure they're hiring the right person too, because sometimes they scramble. If they find out there's, say, vermiculite in the attic that has asbestos in it, the seller's like, I don't know anything about this. Who do we call? They just start Googling people, calling them. Okay, it's this much money? Sure. We don't know. We'll just pay it. Whereas if they weren't on such of a time crunch, they would be able to get proper quotes, have people come in, that sort of thing.
And not like overpay because they like kind of had to and they're under duress in a way. So I would say like declutter, and then after you're done decluttering, look at painting, see if any of that could happen. Once you do that, then I would during that time have the discussion about home inspection, pros and cons. Do you want to do one or not? It's up to you. And there are pros and cons that could come with them. I could go over some cons that I've experienced before with doing one in advance, but I'd still say the pros outweigh, and I would net overall say it's worth doing. And then the next thing, if you have more time, is then you can look at like maybe some reno type stuff. And I always say look at bathrooms and kitchens, because you usually get your highest return there. And when you look at a house, think mechanically, structurally, and the finishes. Try to put it into the finishes. So like countertop, cabinets, backsplash.
Yeah, even like little vanity in the bathroom.
Yeah. So if you want to do those things, then you can, but you don't have to. I would actually do what you said, look more at the staging option. Because if you spend $1,000 on staging, it's a lot of money up front, but you can definitely up the value because the pictures will look great and everything will kind of show really well, like in a magazine, and that will attract people over to the house. So I'd say that's kind of the order.
And another thing is pets. So the pets obviously live in the home. But some people are able to bring their pets, say, to their parents or whatever, to a place during showings or while the house is for sale.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I've been at showings, you probably have too. We walk into a house and there's a dog like freaking out in a cage, and my buyers are like,
distracted, the dog's barking.
Can we just, we'll come back to this one, and the dog, and it's so loud in there, or maybe even dirty from the animals. So that goes back to the cleaning again, but it's hard to keep up with, say, like some big dogs. So if you can have them out of the house, obviously without stressing them out, that's always, usually in some situations ideal, not every situation, because there's some houses that you wouldn't even know they had pets.
Yeah.
But there have been houses I've walked in and my buyers are like, no, it just smells like dog. And we just walk out, no matter how nice the house is.
Yeah.
Or it looks beat up from the dog. So pets is another thing too. Even just getting them groomed before makes a big difference in the smell and whatnot. So if you're getting the big professional cleaning done, or you're cleaning your house yourself and then getting the dogs groomed, so there's going to be less fur and stuff like that around the house.
Yeah, you bring up a good point with the smell thing, because a lot of times people walk in, the smell hits them right away. Yeah. And so if it smells like cat pee or something, then it's like, it kind of takes them away from what the house can be. So you're really limiting your interest level and what you will sell the house for.
Scent is huge.
Yeah, scent's a big
Same
part
with
of it.
smoking. If people have smoked in the house, that really decreases the value, and there are things you can do there. That's a whole other thing, but you can wash all the walls and the ceilings and whatnot with this TCP cleaner that gets rid of nicotine, repaint, try and clean what you can, replace
Quit
what
smoking,
you can.
Maybe you shouldn't smoke in the first place.
Probably not smoke in the house while it's for sale. Wash all the curtains or replace all the curtains and rugs, and get the furniture professionally cleaned. Another thing too is, it's a whole other thing, but you can do like ozone treatments and stuff like that on the house to help with the smoke smell and that. Yeah, and then obviously smoking outside when the house is for sale, and just some of the wood furniture and stuff too can really hold the smell, so trying to get as much of that out as possible, because typically the houses that do smell like smoke, they do just sell for less. So that's something people need to take into account if there is.
The thing that is hard for people too sometimes is that a lot of the time, if you own a house, you're selling. Now, especially in this market, you probably are buying a house first. So if you buy a house first and then you got to get your house up on the market, you're kind of under a time crunch.
Right.
So people probably only realistically going to do this over like 1-2 to a week, like 2 to 7 days or something like that. So I would say that the quick things like the decluttering, touching up paints, looking for anything like maybe water damage in the ceiling or things that like would really scare people, because that happens like 30 years ago, it's still going to be there and it's still going to show, right? You don't want people to think, oh, there's obviously water damage right now and that's not good, but it's like from 30 years ago. It's because the stain's still there. So get rid of stuff like that, or one-off things, and that's where the realtor should really give their opinion on what those things could be, because we show houses to people, so we know what people say and mention and stuff. So you do that, and then maybe like some mulch and touch-ups on the landscape, and then once that's done, then you can maybe go into like, doing some of the light fixtures, vent covers, the finishes if you want to, but that's usually not realistic for most people because of the time situation after they declutter for like 4 days. Yeah. And then they touch up paint for a day. They're like, hey, my house has, like, they have it going on the market the next day and photos are happening like that afternoon or something.
Yeah, and just having a professional.
More than enough, I would say, for sure. And then you could add a staging into that mix in the home inspection if you choose to do both those things.
It's a lot of work for sellers.
It is a lot of work.
So that's why
most of your work's front end loaded, then it hits the market, and then it's just showing.
Yeah. So as realtors, like I know you do it as well, we really try and help the sellers get prepared by sending the cleaner, sending the stager, sending a design consult,
cleaner too is good.
whatnot. So, and sometimes people are like, "Why are you doing all this?" It's like because we know what goes into it. So Yeah.
Because you want them to be able to spend a lot of energy on the decluttering part, because that'll go a long way,
Right.
like 80% of it. And then if we can add in our own cleaner, you know, maybe even a window cleaner or something, that can help too, and a home inspector. And then you know, talk about the staging service, then that really does help the seller out a lot over that like 3-4 days they're doing it. So hopefully that kind of helps people out, kind of know what to do. Should I list my house now?
Yeah, maybe.
All right, let's start decluttering. What should we do?